Hi there, this is Vin from Chive, and in this tutorial I will be showing you how to create this Valentine bud wreath. I'll put links in the description below on where you can purchase the design files for this wreath. This is a pretty simple project to make. It's basically just made up of these single bud stems. And what you end up with is this gorgeous wreath that really can be used for any time of the year, not just Valentine's Day. You could make one in white for winter or fresh greens for spring. This really is a wreath that you can do a lot with. So when you're ready, follow along and I'll show you how easy it is to make. For this wreath, I'm using a 12-inch wreath hoop that I made out of grapevines. I like to make my own wreath hoops because I can control the thickness of the hoop. Most natural hoops come in thicker girth than what I like to use for my wreaths. If you'd like to use a hoop like mine, look on Etsy.com and you'll be able to find a few sellers that sell similar hoops. But honestly, this wreath is so versatile, I think any style hoop will work. Here are the bud stems that make up this wreath. In the design file, you'll see that there's one long bud stem and then two short bud stems. For this wreath, I cut out 10 of those long bud stems and 35 short bud stems. For your wreath, you don't have to rigidly follow along with the number of bud stems that I used. It's going to depend on the diameter of the wreath hoop that you're using and also just on what you want your wreath to end up looking like. If you want it to be fuller, you can use more bud stems. If you want an even more wispy looking wreath, then you can cut back on the number of bud stems. Before you start making your wreath, decide on how you're going to be hanging it. You can attach string or ribbon or nothing at all and hang it on a hook. For this wreath, I'm using a 1/2-inch cloth ribbon. I attach it to my hoop with some hot glue and then tie it off with a simple knot. And now we can start assembling our wreath. So this wreath is basically made up of groups of 3 bud stems. So I group them together by taking one long bud stem and 2 shorter bud stems. And it's important here to make sure that when you group them together, the stems are lined up side by side and not overlapping too much, because you want them all to be touching the glue when you go to glue them on. Here I'm starting at the top of my wreath, but you really can start anywhere on the wreath. If you haven't worked with hot glue before, you'll notice that I do a circular motion with my glue gun before I pull it away from my wreath, and that's just to cut off the glue. If you don't do that and you just pull your gun straight off, you'll notice that you end up with strings of glue. Even with my wreath, I ended up with strings of glue, and you can just get rid of that in the end. And you just continue with this exact same steps. You put your one long bud stem and 2 shorter ones together side by side, and then decide where you want to place them next. Put your glue down and then put the bud stems down. And just keep doing this until your whole wreath is covered. Once you're finished covering your wreath in bud stems, you can take a step back and have a look at your wreath and see which spots need filling. Here I'm just going around and grabbing some short bud stems and just filling the spots that are empty. If you feel like there are spots with too many stems, then simply cut them off. I just went around my whole wreath and trimmed off any spots that I felt were too full, and I also trimmed off branches that were sticking out. And the last step is to clean off those glue strings that I mentioned earlier. I did my wreath pretty quickly, so I have quite a few glue strings. You might not have as many, but they're generally easy to pull off. You just have to go around the whole wreath and look for them. And that's it, your wreath is done. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you haven't already, please subscribe below. This channel is still pretty new, so I really appreciate all your support. And please check out the link to my blog below for more projects. I also post daily to Instagram and Pinterest, so you can follow me there if you'd like to see upcoming new projects.